Thank you very much, Ankan sir. So when it comes to the practical work, it is the teacher demonstration and class practical with all the learners on the similar task, working in the small group, a circus of experiment. With small group engaged in different activities, rotating in a carousel, investigating, organizing in one of the above two ways and problem solving activity. So when it is not a definite definition of a practical work, this particular definition is that is actually happening in our laboratory environment. So when we said the laboratory practices, and nowadays with the help of NEP 2020, the focus is on the development of higher order thinking skills among students, or there is a demand that we must, as a faculty, we will be able to develop, or we must be able to develop the lifelong learning skills among students, but the kind of activity that is happening at institute level are not in line with the practices that we need to follow. So when it comes to the practical activity, it can be of any form. It may be the laboratory investigation, it may be the project work in which the students are working, or it may be any activity that is designed by the teacher in a classroom environment. What are we actually doing, that we divided our class student into number of groups or number of team. We demonstrate the whole activity to the student as per the curriculum defined for that laboratory practice, and students are just copy pasting or imitating the behavior of the faculty as he or she shown in the demonstration part. And students, while working in a group, they are just focusing on the collecting of the data and then interpreting and giving data to the faculty in the form of the final conclusion. So these kind of practical activities are not going to develop higher order thinking skills among students. So when it comes to the practical activity, after analyzing the curriculum, the teacher need to identify that what are the different parameters we need to focus upon as per the curriculum given. So in a laboratory environment also, there are cognitive parameters, there is a development of psychomotor ability among students, and more specifically when we set the response or reaction of the student, that can also be developed in that kind of environment, because time available in these classes are uh, high as compared to the theoretical classes. So we have laboratory practice session for 2 long hours, whereas when it comes to the theoretical class of any subject, it may be a 45 to 50 minutes where the teacher need to focus on all the aspects given in the curriculum. So practice is somewhere missing in our theory classes also, but at the same time in laboratory environment, the students are just copy pasting the environment that is being created by the teacher in that laboratory environment and submitting those practical sheets just for the sake of getting marks or getting attendance. So these kind of practical activities are not going to help the student in terms of the development of their higher order thinking skill. So for this, first we need to understand what we mean by a practical work. So my question to all of you is, what are the different practical activities that is given in your curriculum, and how you enhance these kind of experiences for your students? Yes, any member from the group? What are the different activities to whom you consider as practical activities?
Ma'am, as I can say that our stream is entirely practical. So, in our practical field, apart from the submission works which students do, we also give them various case studies to do, and all lot of practical things which they do, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ankan sir. Any other participant who would like to add something?
Hello,
Yes, Rohit sir.
hello, madam. Different activities in the classroom itself is there in the management.
Okay. Can you give us few examples,
Classroom.
sir?
The examples can be group discussion is there, simulation activities we can perform, sensitivity training is there, brainstorming sessions we can have, group discussions are there.
Thank you
These
very
kind
much.
of regular activities we have.
Thank you very much, Rohit sir and Ankan sir. So rightly added by both the participants that in a theoretical lectures also it is possible for the teacher to provide practical exposure to the student. It may be by the selection of instructional method or it may be by the selection of instructional media. So when I said instructional method, as rightly added by Ankan Garg sir, that despite of the activities that is given in the curriculum of the students, if the teacher is using case study method of analysis, that also help the teacher to provide an practical exposure to the student related to the analysis or observation of the phenomena. As rightly added by Dr. Rohit sir from CU, that when the teacher is organizing group discussion, when the teacher is using simulation based studies, when the teacher is organizing brainstorming sessions for the student, it is not only that the cognitive development is there, but at the same time students are interacting with each other, students are observing the things that is happening in a classroom environment, and all these are nothing but the teaching strategy. When we said instructional strategy, all these things are the instructional strategies, and with the help of the use of those instructional strategies, it is possible for the teacher to create a practical kind of exposure for the student even when they are available with us in our physical classroom for the theoretical lecture. In a laboratory environment, when the students are interacting with the materials, when the students are interacting with the resources or with the machinery and equipments available in those laboratory practices or in workshop area, when the students or with the secondary sources of the data to observe and understand the natural world. So while demonstrating that practical activity, when the teacher do not confine himself or herself just to that particular practical activity given in the printed manual, but the teacher allow the student to find out different way to solve a problem at hand. When the teacher is giving ill structured problem to the students and ask the group of the student to reframe the problem as they understand, the teacher is creating an environment where the students can observe, where the students can have experiential kind of learning. So all these kind of parameter help us to design a practical kind of experience for our students. So practical work is not confined to the laboratory practices only. In a theory classes also, whenever the student have chance to interact with the material, when they have chance to relate the learning with the real environment or with the natural environment, when the students can observe something that is happening in a classroom environment, all those kind of experiences are considered as practical experiences. Say when the teacher is demonstrating something with the help of real object, a theoretical concept the teacher is explaining to the student with the help of a real object, that is again when the students are observing something in a classroom environment. So that is the practical experience the teacher is creating for the students. So rather than engaging the classes in a traditional way of using lecture, the teacher need to add variety of advanced pedagogical approaches, and at the same time the teacher need to think upon that how I can relate my subject content with the real word application. It is possible for us to create such kind of practical experiences for our students. So any learning experience in which the student interact with the material or with the secondary source of data to observe and understand the natural world is considered as a practical activity. So for a technical population or for a technical student, these kind of practical activities or practical work can be organized by the faculty for the student. One is the experiences, when the student experience the phenomena to be happen. So when I said in a heat transfer, when I given an example to my class student, that when they're working with their laptop and there is a heat that is generated while working, what is that phenomena called? Is it conduction, convection, or radiation? What kind of experience I am creating for my students? The student need to apply that learned phenomena and give me the response to the question asked. So that kind of experiences can be generated by me in the class of heat transfer. When I'm saying exercises, say for example in the subject of engineering drawing, or when the students are working in workshop practices where the specifications are given by the faculty related to the various jobs, the quality is already defined by the faculty for the product produced by the student, and students are practicing. What are they practicing? They're practicing the skills, they're practicing the kind of quality of the job they need to produce, and the teacher is evaluating or assessing the performance of the student based on the criteria defined by the faculty. So these are kind of exercises we are going to give to our student. When it comes to the investigation, the students, while working for the project activity, whether it is a major project work or a minor project work, when the students are investigating something with the help of the problem defined uh, by the support of the departmental faculty, students are investigating something for the very first time in their life with the help of the faculty members of the department. So when we said demonstration, when the learners are not matured, so when we are following the cooperative learning strategies in a classroom environment, or maybe for the first and second semester and for third semester students, when we start giving them exposure related to their branch specifications, when we assign some of the practical activities as per their defined curriculum. So teacher demonstrate the whole activity first to the student and then allow the student to perform that activity. So that is demonstration, when we want to expose our student to any new phenomena or any new process. So in that particular case, the demonstration will play an important role. So why initially we need to go with the demonstration? Because students need to be very mindful when they're acting for the various practical kind of activities, considering all the safety and precautions that they need to taken care of while performing those activities. So when it comes to the practical work, it is basically divided into four different categories: the experiences, exercises, investigation, and demonstration. So as per the curriculum given for a given subject, the teacher first needs to have analysis that what kind of experiences it is possible for me to create in the theoretical classes, and what kind of experiences we can create for our students in a practical kind of classes. There are some definite exercises given in the curriculum, but what are the different exercises we need to add on, or maybe sometimes we need to delete and add some new exercises, because as far as the practical portion of the syllabus is concerned, this flexibility is with the department, that what are the different activities they want their students to perform while working with them at institute level. So if the institute or the department want to add few of the practical courses, a few of the practical experiments for the student, they can decide at departmental level and add on those practical activities also to give exposure to the student. So when the students are investigating something, problem definition plays an important role. So as the departmental level, there must be a committee that need to be decided by the head of the department or by higher authority, that who will be responsible for the project in practical project work evaluation, and what are the different guidelines or criteria defined by that particular committee, so that student can investigate for the development, not for the sake of the academic grade, but at the same time for the development of the higher order thinking skills among them. So what is happening in technical institution? So as far as the curriculum of technical institution is concerned, a large amount of time is allocated to the training. That is the practical component. So if it is a diploma level student, the 60% weightage is given to the practical activity and 40% weightage is given to the theoretical component. As far as the graduation level students are concerned, the ratio is 60% to the theoretical component and 40% weightage to the practical component. But again, I'm saying that it is up to the department that what kind of practical exposure they want to give to their students. As for that, as far as our internal evaluation activities or assessment activities are concerned, the flexibility is with the department. The department can decide that what kind of practical exposure is essential as per the demand of the board of work. So keeping this in view, the department can analyze the curriculum thoroughly, and after analyzing the curriculum, the department can define the practical activities as per the demand of the word of work. So mainly when it comes to the curriculum analysis, the major portion divided into the drawing work, the laboratory work, the workshop practice, and different internship project the students need to perform. So why there is an importance given to the practical activity? So when it comes to the practical activity, and we are saying that in the theory classes also, teacher by using the advanced instructional strategy need to give maximum focus on the development of different psychomotor skills also, because when we giving such kind of experiences to our students are able to find out different ways to solve a problem at hand. So it also helps the student to relate the problem with the real world. So they come to know that what is actually happening in the industry, what kind of skill or what kind of knowledge is demanded by the industry. And when the teacher is providing these kind of opportunities, the students are able to define problem, observe problem, and find out number of ways to solve the problem at hand. Second is to arouse and maintain interest to develop an ability to cooperate. So practical activity not only help the faculty or the department to develop technical skills among students, but at the same time, when we giving project activity or a practical activity to the student, and even in a case study analysis within the group, when the students are working together during the group discussion, when the students are discussing about the matter decided by the teacher, they are cooperating with each other. So these kind of activities not only help us for the development of cognitive ability among students, but at the same time, it also help us to develop the cooperation or the ability to uh, manage the resources or manage the things by their own within the group. So development of social skill is also there with the help of practical exposure to promote a logical and reasoning method of thought and develop critical attitude. When the students are working for different practical activities and there are number of error arises, so student will be able to identify those errors and find out the different ways to correct those errors. So rather than manipulating information or manipulating data, the student need to locate those errors, identify those errors, and then try to find out ways that how they are able to eradicate those errors in the future assignment. So by this, it is possible for us to develop critical attitude among students. So for finding facts and for arriving at a new principle. So we allow our students to commit errors. We allow our students to make mistakes sometimes, so that students find out ways that how they are going to reduce or how they are going to give a safe practice to those kind of things not happen in a future. So these kind of activities also need to be given to the student in a practical class. So as per the literature, there are many advantages of the practical work that is given. So it provides hands-on training to the student. When the students are interacting with the material, when students are interacting with the machinery and equipment available in laboratory practices, they have a practical kind of exposure. The development of psychomotor skill is happening at institute level, exposes the student to the work culture of practice as well as to the real job experiences. Say field visit is organized at departmental level. Industry internship is an compulsory activity for the students to perform. A practical exposure in the form of an expert lecture given to the students. So these kind of practices exposes the students to the work culture. So when expert is coming at an institute and interacting with the class student, that expert is sharing the problem of the industry or the real life scenario in which he or she is working. This also give a student a feel of the real working environment. So when practical classes are organized by the teacher by following all the pedagogical principle, it is possible for us to provide a real working environment for the student. It improves the technical skill as well as the soft skill if the teacher decided the student to work in teams and groups. A student may be able to match their competences with the expectations for industry. So some sort of practical exposure out of the institute is also compulsory to design, so that students come to know the demands of the world of work, and likewise they can prepare for their professional growth also. Now before I discuss the problems in the skill development, I would again like to ask to my participant that what are the different problems faced by them when it comes to the implementation of the practical activities at institute level. So what are the different challenges that is faced by all of you in terms of your practical classes? Yes, any member from the group? Any member from the group can reply.
Hello,
Yes, sir.
hello. Madam, the kind of initiation is not there.
Initiation
The
at the part
students
of
are not
faculty.
taking
Okay.
the task being given to them
Okay.
for the participative management. They don't participate, or initiation process is not there. They take it casual way.
Thank
Serious
you very much. Okay.
seriousness is not there.
Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much, Rohit, sir. Any another faculty who would like to add something? What are the different problems faced by all of you when it comes to the implementation of practical work for the students?
Usually, the problems which we face while implementation of the practical work uh, is the lack of interest of students, their immatureness towards the goal, and sometimes infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Ankan sir. So when it comes to the implementation of the practical activity, there are some of the problems that will may be there when it comes to the implementation of the practical part. So lack of appropriate measures, as added by Dr. Ankan Garg sir, that infrastructure facilities may not be available at institute can be one hurdle for the implementation of skill development at institute level. When it comes to that your students are not willing to perform the activity or students are not matured enough to take initiation for the practical experience that is created by the teacher, they are not showing any interest. It may be, I would say, it is the lack of preparedness at the part of the teacher, not at the part of the teacher, and at the part of the departmental level. So when we said that practical experience is created by the teacher for the student and students are not showing any interest for that particular practical activity, we need to look backward to our evaluation and assessment system. So when I'm saying that students are performing that activity but they are not willing to do so, in this particular sense the teacher need to provide feedback to that particular student immediately. So when I said feedback to that student immediately, some course of action need to be decided at departmental level, that if the students are not willing to take a practical activity, what will be the disciplinary measures that we need to taken care of for that student. So when the environment is full of feedback, so we are giving signals to the student that if they are not taking interest in a given activity or they are not taking part for the various experiences that specifically organized for them, what kind of disciplinary actions taken against them. So that can be the one solution for the problem. Another can be when NEP 2020 is set, the continuous assessment of the student. So assessment and evaluation of these activities need to be in a continuous form. So it is not that end of the laboratory you are going to organize a viva and based on that particular viva you are going to give marks to the student. So the real motivational force for the student to work in any kind of environment nowadays is to get reward in the form of marks from the student, from the teacher. So in that particular case, we need to design an evaluation and assessment criteria in such a way that for every practical experience, that for every class, there may be 1 or 2 marks that the teacher is going to give to the students so that they can continuously provide their input instead of preparing for the viva once or twice in a semester and get marks for that practical activity. So somewhere as a teacher, we need to provide feedback to the student, obtain feedback from the student, and design an evaluation criteria in such a manner that every day student need to earn marks for that particular activity or for that particular assignment. So these kind of actions need to be taken care at departmental level. Another important thing that we need to, or the problem I would say that we all are facing as far as the skill development part is concerned, our evaluation system mainly focusing on theoretical component. We are focusing on memorization and learning. So when it comes to the final examination, as far as the theoretical information is concerned, students as well as faculty members are more concerned about those theoretical concepts instead of giving attention to the practical activity or to the practical remarks. Even if at departmental level, when we call any expert from the another organization to conduct viva or external practical activity to the student, it is only the internal faculty member who is giving marks or grades to the student, because that faculty or that expert would say that I do not know the ability of your student as per you have dealt with them throughout the semester, and as per your preference you can give marks to the student. That is again the ill practice that we are following since ages at different institutions. So when it comes to give focus or marks for the practical activity, it is as per the performance of the student, not as per their face value. When it comes to the time available for the skill development, yes, there are 2 hours given for the different practical activities, but that is again not again as per the level of the practical activity. Say for example, the faculty in the branch of civil engineering, when they are dealing for the practical activities of the concrete laboratory, as a chemical engineer, when I'm working in the laboratory of heat transfer, when I'm doing experimentation for the fluid mechanics or for the mass transfer laboratory practices, so 2 hours are not enough for me. When the students are working for the engineering drawing practice, maybe they need more time to practice those kind of phenomena. So in our curriculum also, as per the nature of the skill, as per the level of the skill, the time allotted sometime is not sufficient. Some of the faculty members are in a habit of clubbing the laboratory lecture and converting them into the theoretical lecture, and more focuses on the development or the coverage of the syllabus despite of focusing on the practical development of practical activity among students. So somewhere we are not able to plan practical activities in a full manner. We are not able to organize practical session in such a way that we will be able to provide different kind of experiences for our student. And when it comes to assessment and evaluation, we are not following the guidelines as defined by the curricula or defined by our board or the university, and we are giving marks to the student as per they are able to receive marks in their theoretical portion. Likewise, we are assigning them for the different practical activity without analyzing that some student may be very good in the psychomotor development, another student may be very good when it comes to the cognitive ability. So we need to give marks, or we need to design policies at departmental level, how we can continuously assess the performance of the student as far as their skill development part is concerned. So somewhere we need to revamp our planning, organizing and evaluation of the skill development factor of student. So first we are going to discuss with the planning part of the practical activity. So when it comes to the planning of the practical activity, practical work is not inherently good. It can lead to time wasting unless included in the course for a real purpose. So when it comes to the writing learning outcome, it is not only for the subject information, but at the same time for the laboratory component also, the teacher must have clear learning outcomes defined specifically for the student population. So with the help of this particular experiment or with the help of this particular practical activity, what are the different skills that I'm going to develop? I wish my students to develop. What is the knowledge in terms of the theoretical understanding? It must be developed among student population with the help of the practical activity assigned. What kind of environment I'm going to create for my students so that they are able to respond to the given questions, they are able to interact with the fellow student and with the technical member if available in laboratory environment. So for a practical activity, again, the different learning outcomes need to be designed by the faculty, and likewise we need to perform the further activities under that practical environment. So while planning for the practical work, following points need to be considered. So what is the purpose of this particular practical activity? Am I'm going to develop something out of that, or it is just the theoretical understanding that we're going to reframe in the mind of the student? What is the aim of that practical activity, objective of the practical work, or if needed, the teacher need to reconceptualize the practical activity also. So as far as the printed manual of different laboratory environment of workshop practices are concerned, there is the aim of the practical activity that is given and defined. So that aim need to be divided into different subcomponent part, and as for those subcomponents, we need to define different learning outcomes for that. So we need to conceptualize that whole practical activity and then allow the students to understand that activity in the different activity specifications planned by the teacher. The place of the practical work within the curriculum. So why we need to focus on this? When we are designing the time schedule, or in simple terms, when we are defining the timetable of a given class, we need to understand that if this particular theoretical concept is clear to the student in a class, only after that the student can go for the practical activity. So what kind of exposure need to come before they entered in the laboratory environment or in different practical classes? So likewise, keeping all the infrastructure facility available at institute level, when the departmental faculty preparing for their coursework files, as per the coursework files only, the timetable of the students need to be planned. Sometimes the infrastructure facility is not available in abundance at departmental level. In that particular manner, the teacher need to decide, or all the departmental faculty need to sit together and find out that what practical activity need to be given before lunch, and what are the different activities that we can perform for our students after lunch hours. What are the different kind of activities or infrastructure that students are going to use in a collaborative manner, and what kind of infrastructure facilities specifically need to be free for a specific semester for the specific class student. So that to design a timetable is not a very easy thing when there are number of semesters working together. After analyzing the curriculum of all the subjects, the teacher need to find out a place that when the practical activity can be organized, so that student have a chance to interact with material and resources of information in the presence of the faculty. The third important thing while planning for the different practical activities is role of the teacher and role of the student. So what is your role as a teacher? So as a teacher, it is not that as per my choice I'm going to give information to the student. As a teacher, I need to follow all the policy guidelines. I need to follow the curriculum that is given to me. So syllabus coverage is also an important part of that particular subject, and I need to focus on that aspect also. At the same time, as a teacher, I need to follow all the academic guidelines that is designed specifically for the student. So within that academic calendar only, I need to perform all kind of activities that is designed for the student. So as a teacher, when it comes to the role, sometimes due to the academic pressure or due to the other administrative responsibilities also, the teacher need to find out different ways that how it is possible for me to give maximum time to my students so that they can learn and understand. When it comes to the role of the student, the role of the student is specifically defined. The student need to perform all the activities that is designed by the teacher. So these are the three different factors that we need to consider. Now we will cover all the 3 points in detail. That when it comes to the Planning for the practical activities started from the implementation up to the assessment. First, as a teacher, we need to define different learning outcomes. So, what my students are intended to learn. So, those objectives are considered as the developer objective. So, as per the learning outcomes defined by the teacher need to design activity specification chart. So when I said activity specification chart, it is not only in the workshop practices or in the laboratory environment, even in the theoretical classes also, the teacher need to plan for all the activities that they are going to perform for today's lecture. So in the first 5 minutes, I'm going to explain this particular concept to the student. Next 2 minutes, I'm going to interact with my class student. Next 10 minutes, I'm going to develop information related to the topic that I'm going to cover today. After those 10 minutes, what are the different activities that I'm going to give to my student to perform while they are available with me in my class? Then there will be a conclusion phase of my lecture. After concluding the whole concept, what is the key question I'm going to ask to my student to consider it as a take home assignment? So all the activities need to be planned in such a manner that student are engaged in the process of learning by the teacher. So in a practical classes also, the teacher need to define whole the activity specification in the form of the chart displayed for the student, and so, that act as a feedback tool for the student to know that what their student teacher want them to learn while working in in that particular environment. And after that, after defining that activity specification chart for the student, the teacher need not only to demonstrate the activity or to assign that activity to the student, but at the same time the teacher need to continuously observe that what the group of students doing, whether they are following the activities defined by the teacher, or within the group or within the team they are interacting with each other, only one or two students are acting for that particular activity, rest of the students are either gossiping or they are not taking part in that particular activity. So in that particular case, the teacher need to observe all the classroom events, and as per the events happening, the teacher need to interact with the student, give them continuous feedback related to the activity they are performing. So after demonstrating or after assigning activity, the responsibility of the faculty is not to sit on the chair, but to observe and interact with the students all the time, so that students become mindful for the activities given to them. And then at the end of every practical experience, the teacher need to assess the performance of the student. So what my students are able to do or what they actually learn. So if the learning outcome that is specifically designed for them, if they are able to achieve those learning outcomes, we consider that practical activity is over. If some of the students are able to cover those learning outcomes and rest of the students are not able to receive, so it can be given in the form of take home assignment, or it can be revised by the faculty again, so that students are able to understand the matter fully. So these are the four different things that we need to consider in a environment where practical activities are happening. So when it comes to the planning of assessment, when it comes to the planning for assessment of the practical activity, we are saying that after activity specification, the teacher need to interact with the students all the time, observe them, give them feedback. So on the basis of what I'm providing feedback to the student. So in this particular case, there are three major stakeholders that are available. One is the student view, second is the employer view. So when I'm saying employer view, so after the formal education, in what sector my students are going for work? So what are the demands of the industry? What are the demands of the different organization? In what sense they are talking about practical activity or the skill development? So that also need to be focused by the faculty while providing feedback to the student. Say for example, the curriculum is not revised. If in case the curriculum is not revised since last 10 to 15 years, and these are the old practical activities that is mentioned in the syllabus of the student. By considering the employer view or by understanding the needs of the world of work, the teacher can add on new experiences for the student, so that we need to consider the employer view while developing skills among student population. When it comes to the academician view, the teacher need to keep in mind that if, say for example, for a practical activity, if the 40 marks weightage is given in the content, so those 40 marks, how my students are going to get those 40 marks, what will be the distribution of those marks, on what parameters we are giving marks to those particular student, and within that academic calendar the student must be able to complete all the practical activities that is being designed for them. When it comes to an academician view, we need to define a departmental level, that in a practical kind of environment, how many times we are going to conduct a written test or a viva versa for the student, whether my student need to present any information while working in laboratory environment, if there are written assignments compulsory for the student, is there any kind of written assignment we are going to give to our student in a practical classes also. So it is not that the written assignment can be given or must be given by the teacher in the theoretical classes only. In the practical classes also, the teacher can plan for any of the assignment activities that can be given to the student. So when it comes to the student view, student need good marks and attendance out of that. Employers want the student to have more higher order thinking skills, or they look for the attitude development of the student at institute level. So rather than just focusing on the cognitive and the skill development, the attitude of the student also need to be developed. That is the demand of the world of work, and what is the academic criteria and guidelines. As per those academic criteria and guidelines, the teacher need to plan for the whole activity, started from the planning, organizing up to the evaluation and assessment part of that particular activity. So these are the three different stakeholders we need to consider as important when it comes to planning, organizing, and assessment of the different practical activities. So when the teacher is assessing the performance of the student in practical classes, the teacher need to find out the two different parameters, the personal attitude of the student. When Rohit sir said that when it comes to take part in different practical activities, students are either not matured enough or they are not willing to perform those activities. That is what the personal attitude of the student. So behavior need to be modified. So the major purpose of any education system is to change the behavior of the student. So when we said change the behavior of the student, we need to create an environment where sometimes student, if they are not willing, they are forced to work for that particular activity. So when it comes the part of day to day routine, it become their attitude to perform certain activities by their own. So the very first thing that we need to develop among student population is their personal attitude. They must be mindful for the different activities designed at departmental level for them, and to take part in those particular activity. If the students are not willing, the department need to create an environment where the students are forced to work for that subject matter. Second is the work attitude. So when it comes to the development of work attitude among student, give them chances to practice, practice, and practice. So work attitude can be developed if the teacher is not providing the ready-made products to the student, but the teacher is creating opportunity where the student can design and develop the course content. So when the student are practicing about that information, the working attitude is going to be developed. So these are the kind of activities we need to consider when it comes to plan for assessment of the practical work. So there are four major components that we need to consider while evaluating practical activity. One is the process evaluation, second is the product evaluation, third is the general behavior of the student, and fourth, compulsory activity as per the guidelines, that is viva voce, that we need to conduct for our student. So every kind of activity at departmental level, when it is practical by nature, these are the four different things on the basis of which we can plan for assessment. When it comes to the process assessment, in a process, for example, if we take an example of laboratory environment, so when it comes to the process, the teacher, when it comes to the planning of the practical work, say name and designation and laboratory experimental activity, course code, department or class and semester. So when it comes to the planning of those practical activities, as a teacher I need to find out how many experiments are given in the curriculum, how many are planned, and how many experiments we need to be completed before the mid semester review, and up to the end semester how many experiments we need to perform. Any new experiment that we are going to add for our student as per the demands of the word of work, or as per any new subject that is added in the curriculum of the student. For all those experiments, how many number of tests, that is the written test, that we need to conduct for our student, and how many number of viva voce that we are going to plan. So mid semester, before mid semester, after mid semester, how many number of experiments we are going to perform, number of tests, number of viva voce that we need to conduct for our student. Any additional, when the students are working in the laboratory, what are the different additional facilities that we need to require, or what are the different equipments as per the demand of the word of work that must be there in the laboratory environment for the smooth conduct of the experiments. If yes, mention the details below. Availability of the updated lab manual at the beginning of the semester. If the teacher plan to add any new experiment to the particular course, what are the different details that we need to add it in the printed manuals of the student? If yes, the teacher need to add on all the details before the initiation of the semester. Any suggestions or recommendation for the improvement of the laboratory manual or experiment at the mid of the semester, we need to taken care of the suggestions or recommendation given by the expert and even by the student, and we need to add on if possible within that particular semester, or otherwise we need to prepare or develop the lab infrastructure so that coming students are not going to face such kind of difficulties. Kindly mention the detail, if any, of issues regarding maintenance or availability of the laboratory equipment. So monthly, we need to update the record of the laboratory environment, and likewise, we need to develop our laboratory environment. We are not buying resources just for the sake of adding into the infrastructure facility. As per the demand of the subject, as per the demand of the students, we need to maintain our laboratory environment. Mid semester, we need to take care of the student feedback also, and if there is any important suggestion or recommendation or an important comment given by the student, the teacher need to take an appropriate action, and that action detail must also be submitted at departmental level. And while working with the student, the teacher must be able to identify the weaker student and find out what can be the corrective measures that we can take for the development of ability among that particular candidate. So this is the planning part. So this is just the suggestion. There may be different policy guidelines issued to all of you as far as the planning of laboratory environment is concerned. But in nutshell, these are the major components that we need to consider when it comes to the planning of the practical activity. Next is when it comes to the assessment of the laboratory work, and we said that for any of the practical activity, there are four major factors that we need to consider. One is the process evaluation, second is the product evaluation, general behavior, and viva voce. If for specifically for the laboratory environment, I need to distribute marks among these four parameters. When it comes to the process, so what my students are doing when they are available with me in that laboratory environment, the student will perform that particular activity. So what if they are their ability to carry out the experiment following the correct procedure or not, they are able to handle equipment or other resources that are available in the laboratory, if they are able to observe and record the information that is essential, the ability to follow different standards as per the guidelines issue. So that can be the part of the process evaluation. If my students are able to calibrate, they are able to measure, they are able to perform the experiment by following all the activity specification designed by the teacher. They are able to collect data, they are able to record that data. It means students are following all the process requirements. When it comes to the product evaluation in the laboratory environment, the product can be in the form of report, it can be the analysis of the result, or it can be interpretation of the result that need to be decided by the teacher. So these are the quality of the product evaluation, what kind of product you demanded from your student and whether they are able to produce the quality product or not. That benchmark need to be decided by the faculty. In a practical environment, the along with the cognitive and psychomotor skill, there is also the development of affective domain among student population. So when it comes to the affective domain, it means behavior plays an important role. If my student in a laboratory environment care for the different materials and equipment, if his attitude towards the fellow student or the student is able to work independently in that particular environment, if the student is able to utilize the time and space that is given in the laboratory environment, it means the student is able to show a good behavior in that particular environment. So all these behavior related parameters need to be followed or decided by the department. Viva voce. So when it comes to the Viva voce, it is a predefined evaluation tool. So we can design questions related to the understanding of the concept, principles, and theoretical component. Advanced nature question may also be called from the student population that is related to the critical judgment and reasoning, and if the student have the ability to draw conclusions and recommendation, that can also be the part of your viva voce. So those four parameters can be divided into process evaluation, product evaluation, behavior, and viva voce. And as per the academic guidelines given, we can give weightage to these different parameters. So evaluation, when it comes to the continuous assessment of the student as far as the laboratory environment is concerned, the teacher can divide the activity into 7 different components. So what is the initial preparation at the part of the student for the practical activity? So whether the student come prepared for the information, theoretical information that is desired for that particular experiment, or student need to prepare for that information. Likewise, the rating and score given by the teacher to that particular student, how the teacher come to know that student is initially prepared for that particular activity or not. When the teacher is interacting with the student and asking few questions to the student, the teacher come to the conclusion that whether student need to give more theoretical information related to that particular practical activity or not. And likewise, the teacher can monitor the performance of the student. When the teacher is not spoon feeding information, the teacher asks the student to find out or select the equipment or component any related to that practical activity. So the teacher can evaluate or assess the student performance in terms of process evaluation, layout of the equipment. The student is able to operate that equipment independently, or with the help the student come to know that how this equipment or machinery is going to work and how I'm going to operate it. It can also be assessed by the teacher by observing. If the student is observing the phenomena, student is able to complete simple calculation and graphs, etc. As per the demand of that practical activity, the teacher need to assess the student performance. What is the overall initiative in performing the experiment in a given time? The teacher can also evaluate the performance of the student at the end of the laboratory environment, the presentation of the lab report, and when the student is going to leave that laboratory environment, how the students are maintaining the working area after the completion of the experiment. So as far as teacher involvement in laboratory environment is concerned, teacher, as we are busy in our theory classes, the teacher is also busy all the time in the practical classes also. If the teacher is need to observe 25 to 30 students every day in a laboratory environment and need to perform the assessment of the student in a continuous basis. So this can be also be used by the teacher as far as the evaluation of the laboratory environment is concerned in a continuous manner. So I hope it is clear to all of you. Yes, any question from your side? Any member, if you have any question? Yes, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, madam, audible. No questions.
Thank you very much, Rohit sir. So when it comes to the laboratory work is going to provide opportunity to the student for the direct experiences that facilitate not only the development of the cognitive ability, but also for the psychomotor ability. So when we said in a laboratory environment, there is development of cognitive and psychomotor skills, it means the learning outcome need to be defined in by considering these two parameters. So likewise, we need to define the objectives of the laboratory environment. It can be, if I am saying can be, it may be because I do not know the policy guidelines that is issued to all of you by your department. I'm just providing you the general guidelines that must be kept in mind by the teacher while organizing or assessing these kind of activities. So as per my opinion, when the students are working in the laboratory environment, the different learning objectives or outcomes need to be the integration of the theoretical knowledge with the practice. Thus, of different experimental method need to be known to the student. The student must be able to select, use, and operate a various instrument and different accessories available in laboratory environment. It is not only confined to the printed manual, the information given, but at the same time, the student need to find out the different alternatives and different selection of the appropriate material and procedure for testing and other studies. And at the end, the student must be able to interpret the results as per the data obtained by the student. So these can be the probable learning outcomes that we wish our student to complete after the uh, practical activities. So there are few suggestions for the teachers also. For laboratory environment, the teacher need to define and refine the objective of each experiment. The teacher must develop and use the laboratory manual. If the infrastructure facility is not available at institute level, the teacher need to find out way, liaison with other institution, make use of other policy guidelines developed by AICT, and find out the different ways where the specific practical activity has got to be done. So in case facilities not available at institute level, we can find out a mentor institute, or we find out or collaborate with other industries and institutions to perform those practical activities. When the teacher is assigning that practical activity to the student beforehand, the teacher will first demonstrate all the experiment. Then the student should be asked to perform that experiment, record the observation, and interpret the test result individually or in group. So this again decided by the teacher, that whether the students are working individually or within the group. And say for example, there are many experiments that given in the syllabus of that particular group of student, and infrastructure facilities are not available for every group. So simultaneously there may be two experiment carry forward by the teacher in a laboratory environment. So one group of students are working on a first experiment, say, and another group of students are working on the second experiment. And in the next laboratory session, the group of the students are helping each other to understand both the practical activities. So this can also be the approach when infrastructure is not available at institute level. As far as suggestions for teachers are concerned, there must be preparation of the schedule and record progress for each and every student. It means the channel of feedback, the channel of communication and element of feedback must always be the part of laboratory environment. As per the schedule planned by the teacher need to record the progress of the student before giving an experimental activity to the student. The teacher need to ensure that that equipment is ready, uh, in condition. So calibrate that equipment, The teacher need to perform the activity beforehand. He or she is going to assign that activity to the student. Preferably there must be individual performance. If not simultaneously experiment can be run in a laboratory environment, and student can also be divided into group not more than 2 to 3 students. In a laboratory environment that is specifically designed for the development of psychomotor skills among students, the student need not to rewrite that activity again and again that is already available. Rather than this particular time period can be used for the development of the skill instead of writing that activity in a laboratory environment. The teacher on a continuous basis must check the laboratory report and provide immediate feedback to the student so that student can improve the quality of the work produced by him or her. So when it comes to the planning of the laboratory environment, the faculty planning that we already discussed, that the faculty need to prepare two different sheet. One is for the practical part, planning and organizing of the practical activity, and second planning is for assessment and evaluation of the practical activity. So what kind of record you need to have as far as the student assessment performance is concerned. Second major planning is identification of training needs of the faculty or of the technical staff. If the teacher wishes to add on any new experiment to the syllabus of the student, what kind of training requirement at the part of the faculty and at the part of the technical staff. Breakdown, maintenance and calibration of equipment and record that also need to be planned beforehand. Inventory details need to be uploaded in a continuous manner. Record of consumable and non-consumable must always be ready in laboratory environment. So for analyzing the practical activity, the learning objective, the design of the practical activity, and how the students are going to present that information. Is it in a written form? Is it the oral presentation? Is it the written test conducted by the teacher? Or is it a viva voce that need to be conducted by the teacher? So that activity presentation part also need to be decided collaboratively at departmental level only. So learning outcome, design or the activity specification part or presentation. So I will transfer my PowerPoint presentation to all of you, in which I have designed learning outcomes by referring to the internet resource, that this may be the probable learning outcome as per the activity given to the student in laboratory environment. Design will include openness and enclosure, logical structure of the activity, understanding of the scientific idea, and what the student have to do with the object and with the material. That is again the part of the design activity. What the student have to do with the idea. So once the activity is known to the student, in what fashion the student need to perform that activity, that is again the part of the design. When it comes to the presentation, how is the purpose rationally communicated to the student? How is the activity explained to the student? Whole class discussion before the practical activity begins, and following the practical activity, what kind of discussion is organized by the teacher in a class? What kind of student record we are wishing so, and what are the learning demands that also need to be evaluated by the teacher. So when it comes to the assessment of effectiveness when used, so effectiveness can be observed at two different levels, that is up to the level 1 and up to the level 2. So when it comes to the effectiveness at level 1, these are the few questions: that did the student do what they were intended to do and see what they were intended to see. So what kind of observing environment the teacher is creating at laboratory classes. So this can also be considered by the teacher, and likewise the rating scale need to be developed by the faculty. So these are few questions that we need to answer, that whether my students are able to observe, whether my students are able to perform and achieve the level of effectiveness. At effectiveness level 2, how many students could recall what they do and the main feature of what they observed. So during the viva voce, is the student are able to summarize the different evidences related to that particular activity. So likewise, the rating scale need to be developed by the teacher. And during viva voce, the second major question that we need to focus upon is how many students have a better understanding of the ideas the activity was intended to help them to understand. So it is not only the information the students are understanding, but at the same time, the number of idea that is collected by the student while performing that particular practical activity. So this is about a practical work or the planning or organizing of the different practical activities. There are many practical activities that is given in the curriculum of the syllabus. We have discussed only the laboratory work, but we have also the drawing work, that is again a practical activity, the workshop practice, again a practical activity, industrial training is a practical activity, field work is a practical activity, and project work is a practical activity. And like we have discussed the planning of the laboratory environment, we need to plan for all the practical activities that is given in the curriculum of the syllabus. So this is all from my side. In conclusion, we will say that when it comes to the practical activity, the psychomotor skills are developed effectively if the practical work is carefully planned and organized by the teacher. With the help of a practical activity, it is possible for me to develop problem solving skills among students so that they can effectively execute that practical activity. The student need to focus on the quality of the work. They must be able to communicate their work more effectively in any way the teacher is wishes to perform by the student. And as per the demand of the word of work, we need to plan for such kind of presentation. When it comes to the evaluation of the student performance in practical activity, it must always be in a continuous basis, and teacher must always provide corrective feedback to the student as far as their performance is concerned. So these are few of the parameters that we need to consider when it comes to organizing different practical activities for the student.